This isn't good. It's 12:59 and literally no one's on for class. Give people a couple more minutes to get on. Give people one more minute. All right, let's go ahead and start with our accountability check-in. Happy Monday. You can let us know how many contacts you've made, and you can count the weekend, which is the fun part about the Monday, if you've done any open houses or anything like that, any appointments gone on or contracts accepted. And Wiz, you want to get us started?
Yeah, so I add 2 to the contact list, and I went to an open house over the weekend. Just one house.
Excellent.
Yeah, but that's it. I don't have any. I tried to contact a couple of friends, but yeah, still doing that.
Great job. Phil?
Hi, what are we doing?
Just a little accountability check-in. How many contacts did you do over the weekend?
I did 0 contacts over the weekend, but I did write 2 offers and got 1 accepted.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Jesse?
Hi. Well, I think I had like 5 contacts over the weekend. Yeah, and that's it. And then I showed a bunch of houses.
Excellent. And Desriel?
Hello. Let's see. I think I had probably like 4 contacts. I'd have to go on there and check. And then as far as meeting with clients, on Friday, I went to hopefully they're going to sell, but they're hopefully go with us. My counterpartner, Nate, and I went out there to take a look at their property, and they're talking with one other agent right now, but I did get to go to see their house, and it's really cool. It's like an old like Grange type deal out by Galice almost, so it was unique and fun and a really cool experience.
Awesome. That's exciting. Thornton?
Hey.
Hey, how was your weekend? We're just doing our accountability check-in.
Oh, good. I have nothing to be accountable for this morning.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's still time left in the day.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, I think I hit everyone except for I know one person doesn't have their mic or camera working. Oh, Melissa. Oh, Melissa, are you there? Okay. Oh, she might have got disconnected. Okay, so today we're gonna do price to sell, and we're gonna have Kristen. Oh, here she comes. Come back. Kristen Radar out of KWSC, and she has built her successful real estate business based on what she learned working as an elementary school teacher. So asking why questions and listening intently allows her to discover each client's unique needs. Oh, Kristen serves on leadership boards and trains fellow realtors at local and national level. She's the top 1% realtors in the Portland metro area. I think this might be her. Hold on one second. Hello, this is Mara. All right, so now she is on, and welcome Jamie as well. So she's gonna go over price to sell, and then if for those of us that are in different markets across Oregon and have different MLS systems. Don't worry about that because tomorrow's class will dive deeper into how your MLS system works to build the CMAs and find comparables in those. So don't worry so much about the logistics of like being in the MLS if you're not in the MLS, because you'll get that exposure tomorrow if you're a PC client. But otherwise, she'll have tons of really great information about pricing appropriately and how to price homes in this crazy market.
Are you ready for me to take over?
Yes, go for
Sorry
it.
about that.
That's okay.
Not totally straightforward. Now I feel like a total idiot, but
Nope, you're
okay.
all right.
Awesome. Okay, so are you signing out?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn your little doorbell sound on. If anyone enters the waiting room, it'll like
Okay.
ding dong on at you in case anyone's running a few minutes late.
Sounds good. Do I need to like hit the reclaim host or anything, or just let that go?
Nope, it will assign you when I leave, and since you logged in, you have all the host
Cool.
capabilities.
Okay, sounds good. If you guys could turn your videos on, I don't know if you've ever been in a class or watched a class or anything, but for me to talk to a blank screen is not super fun. So I can't really read your action if you're interested or if you're not listening. So that would be super duper helpful. Thank you. I mean, unless you're in the bathroom, don't turn it on. But other than that, it is really helpful. I am a former teacher, so I teach by reaction and everything else. So be as interactive as you can for me. Otherwise, I'm gonna get bored talking to a blank screen. Eating's fine. I usually eat on camera too. So yeah. Awesome. All right, you guys. So no problem if your screen has no camera. Okay, so we are going to, if you know me, I know a couple people are on that know me. If you don't know me, I'm pretty direct, pretty straightforward. I'm going to go fairly quickly, partly because I do have to zip out at 3:30. I have 2 kids and tonight's a wrestling meet, so I've got to get one of them where they need to go. I not very good at screen sharing. Bear with me here. It looks like maybe some of you may have the pages in front of you. Some of you may not. I'm going to try and figure out how to share my screen to get to the PowerPoint. Not real good at that. Okay, there we go. All right. So I'm going to power through and I guess it would help me just to know, either put in the chat if I can figure out how to show that as well. Or maybe just unmute and tell me how long have you been in real estate so I can kind of get a gauge for my audience here.
I'm going on about 3 full months.
Okay, cool.
I'm actually been doing it for 2 months. This is my, well, going on 3 months.
Wow, awesome. Okay. Anybody else?
I got licensed in August, I think.
Okay.
So a little bit longer than 4 months, but yeah, seems like
I've
it's
been
been
in
way
real
longer.
estate. I've been in real estate a while, like 10 years as transaction coordinator, but I got licensed in November.
Okay, very good. Awesome. And I think I know everyone else on the screen, maybe anybody else want to say something? Apparently I can't actually see the chat if I see you and I'm screen sharing. So if you put something in the chat, I apologize. You're gonna have to speak up. Okay, so if nobody else is gonna go, then here's the deal. I'm not sure what Mara said because I don't know if she told you, but I was fighting trying to get into Zoom. The quick background on me is I'm just almost doing this 19 years now. I have a very small team. It's just myself and then a full-time administrative assistant, which she's so much more than that. She pretty much runs everything and does everything for me, which is super helpful to have. And then I normally have a buyer's agent as well, which usually works with about 75% of my buyers. However, I've been without a buyer's agent since December. So I'm doing all of this myself, which is a little crazy. But it's also fun to be working with more buyers again, because buyers are a lot more fun. And so I sell about 70 homes a year, and I am 100%, well, 90% referral based. So 90% of my business comes from my sphere, referrals, and repeat business. The other 10% comes from my farm, which I farm a geographic area, which they are literally farms. So it's a very non-traditional one. And I get, I'd say 3 to 7 listings per year on my farm. And I've been doing my farm about 6 or 7 years now. And then the rest are actual warm leads, I guess you would say, from the internet. People just look at my reviews online and then they hire me just based on that, which is pretty cool. Or they warm call me. I don't cold call. I don't call for sale or expired or FSBOs or expireds. I don't even actually call, like Gary Keller would strike me down if he could see this or hear this, but I don't actually even call my own sphere. I have like phone fear, I guess. And my, just for you guys, since a lot of you are brand new, I would just go back to the fact that, really count on the people that you know. I just send out a postcard every month. That's what I've been doing for almost 19 years now. And that is my bread and butter. I don't have any fancy lead programs that I pay for. I use Outlook to keep track of everybody. I'm pretty basic and old school in that sense. Jokingly, I say I'm a dinosaur. But you really can make it in this industry without doing all the things that sometimes people tell you you have to or need to do. You can do it relatively inexpensively as well. Before I jump into that, does anybody have any questions based on anything that you want me to expand on with that sort? No, I see one person, so I'll keep going. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna skip. I don't even know how to do this. You guys, someone help me with. Anyone unmute and tell me how to get out of the screen to show like the whole thing?
I have no idea.
Okay.
All
All right. Maybe I just leave it like this then.
Looks fine. What do
okay,
what do you
cool.
want to do?
How do I make it fill the whole screen?
Yeah.
You have to go to the slideshow, I think, at the top. Next to your right. Do you see? No, to the right. We're down. Go down. Well, maybe that works too. Is that
Okay,
what you want?
sure, I guess. Okay.
Okay.
So I think this is what you guys have. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm just gonna kind of jump through this a little bit. I do have an instructor thing as well, but I usually go off of this. So yeah, it is really important to add 10 new contacts a day. I'm terrible at it. I'm like the secret agent. When I first started, I felt like I was one step ahead of a car salesman, if you will. So I was kind of a secret agent. I still feel that way sometimes, but pretty much everyone knows I'm a realtor. And so I can't go anywhere without people wanting to talk to me. They start the conversation about houses. And so it is, if you can, but when you're brand new, starting to add those contacts. When I first did it, I went through the tax main and I looked up everybody that I knew. I found their mailing address if I didn't already have it, and I just added them to my mailing list that way. Obviously, if you're bold and brave, you would just ask them for it and say, hey, I'm going to be sending out some really informative pieces about the real estate market. May I do that for you? 10 handwritten notes are super important. Speaking with people, I'm not very good at that. Previewing homes, for sure, do that if you can, because that's really helpful too. Skip that. Skip. Where's all the rest of this? Is this the page? Is this what you guys have in your handout, or does it look different?
Are we on the station 5 or what? Do you know
I have this big binder. You know?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have the binder, but do you know which part of the binder?
These are
So this like this page
Oh.
20 to 25. Do you guys have these pages in your binder?
Let me check.
They didn't give me a binder.
No, they look different.
This doesn't look very helpful. It looks like we're like skipping things.
No, wait a minute. 21. Those are similar. I mean, I have pricing recommendations on page 21.
Okay.
But
What section, Dawn?
the fifth section, fifth.
Fifth. Okay, thank you.
Section 5.
So this page 21, do you guys have that?
It's different, but yes, I mean,
Okay.
yes,
This is
yes, it is.
interesting.
Tip 1 is on here. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
mean, I feel like tip 1, we're not going in the right order here. So let's just go back to this and let's just talk about it. Don't feel like, if you're okay with it, I'm not going to totally follow the guide. I will 100% admit to you that pricing homes is like my kryptonite. I agonize over it. If some other agent calls me and is like, hey, what do you think about this? Somehow I can like rattle it off, no problem. But when it comes to me and it's going to be my listing, or I'm competing for the listing because, you know, they wanted the price, it is like the most terrifying thing. So if that feels that way for you, that's very natural. And I wish I could say it goes away. It gets easier, but you know, it is always very scary, right? Because you are dealing with this person's, probably for a lot of people, their biggest financial asset, and you don't want to screw that up. In this market, the kind of cool part about this market is it's very telling, it's very reactionary. So you're going to know pretty darn quickly if you priced it correctly or not. And so I know I'm not going to go too much into each individual RMLS, but the way I look at a home, the first thing I do is let's just pretend you got the call, you're going to go on a listing appointment. I print out the very last RMLS listing. So I have that in front of me and I study it for what I need to know. If you are lucky enough to have a house in a very homogeneous neighborhood, like cookie cutter neighborhood, it's going to be pretty easy for you to figure out what's going on. But so at any rate, the first thing I do is I print that out, and I will also print out the tax ID that goes with it so I can understand what the tax assessed value is at. It's not always very relevant, but it's just good to know. Then you also want to look at the square footage in RMLS. Does it match the tax ID? Because maybe there's a discrepancy there, because square footage is obviously very important. And then what I'll do is I will, because it does sometimes, okay, so we know that Zillow, Redfin, and Realtor, they figure out their pricing based on algorithms. They take the average per square foot price for the area and they times it by the square footage of the house. Does Redfin, do any of those computers or algorithms know if the house has been updated? Nope. Do they know if the house is next to a busy road? Nope. Do they know if it's a 1 level versus a 2 level? Yeah, but are they taking that into account? Probably not. So, but your sellers, the people you are going to meet with, they've already looked at least Zillow and Trulia or Zillow and Redfin to see what do they think their house is worth based on those computer systems. And so when I print it out, I wish I had one to kind of show you guys. On the very left bottom corner, I write like Z for Zillow, RF for Redfin, and R for Realtor.com. And I put the 3 prices right there. I look up that address and I put those there so that when the seller says, but Zillow said, I can say, well, I can either counteract it. I can say, well, I know Zillow said this, but this is actually what I think. Or, Zillow's kind of accurate on this one, but I always explain how Zillow's algorithms come up with their price. And that's not always very accurate, but I at least know that going into it. The other thing you should always know is what did it last sell for? It's always very helpful to know, let's say you've got a street with 10 homes on it. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many times someone will say, well, but my neighbor's house just sold for X. Most of the time, the neighbor's house sold like a year ago or 2 years ago. It's never in the same time span that they remember it as. And so you have to be ready for that. And so I usually will kind of print up a little thing too that says, okay, what other houses sold on this street in the last couple of years? So that, or you can just be like, oh yeah, I knew that, and at least then you sound like you know what you're doing because you knew that one was on the market. And often they don't remember the price, right? It's either really high or really low compared to what it was. And so then when you say, oh, actually your neighbor's house listed for this and sold for this, it's really eye-opening for them a lot of times. But you have to remember, most sellers these days, even if they're not buying in the area, they've got Redfin on their phone and once they start even thinking about selling, they're looking at Redfin constantly because Redfin's giving them the data and they're saying, oh, this one just came up, that one just came up. And they are in a sense comparing their home to those homes. But you also have to remember, most people see their own home through rose-colored glasses, right? So they always usually think it's worth more than it is. So when I go with the RMLS, then if it's a really tight neighborhood, I guess we're all from a different area, so I'm not going to use any examples, but if you had a neighborhood where, the closest 50 homes were all built by the same builder around the same time, I often use the legal address for my initial search to figure out exactly what's just happening in that very, very micro niche neighborhood. Then sometimes I'll do a radius search and I'll just go a 1/4 mile out in all directions. You have to know your neighborhoods pretty well, because if there's a junker neighborhood next to a really nice neighborhood, we don't want to pull those in. So sometimes you can use a polygon search. And what I'll do is I'll pull up the last 6 months of listings. In an appreciating market like this, you have to be very careful. If you go back more than 6 months, those homes, even 12 months ago, right, they sold for 16% less. So if you go back 6 months right now, they're maybe even selling 8% higher right now. So be very careful using those. Sometimes I even start with just 3 months to see, let's see, it's January. 3 months right this time of year is hard because not as much sold in the fall. So November, December, or October, November, December. So those prices, a lot of our appreciation usually occurs from January to June, the bulk of it. It's not necessarily like 1% or 1.5% per month. But for our purposes, sometimes I'll just say, okay, it was 6 months ago, I'm gonna add 8% to what I think it might be if the house sold last fall. Even last fall, man, our market, I don't know where you guys are all at, but the market here is so different where it was even in the fall because of the lack of inventory. So sometimes the best sales comparables are actually what's on the market right now or what's pending versus what's sold recently. Does that make sense? I'm talking really fast and I realized if we were in a classroom, I could read you and someone might have their hand up. I'm going to take a breath for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
No, keep going through.
Well, I kind of have a question on that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not really a question. It's just what you just said. I mean, pricing out properties currently, I was just thinking, is it better for me to go back to last January, February, a year ago and kind of see how much over list properties we're selling for? Or is it, again, like you just said, really, you know, anything that sold back even last fall is kind of past history, and now I need to focus on what's pending currently this last month?
You know, yeah, because our market is so different right now than it even was, you know, last summer, because last summer we had more inventory. Right now we are in such a tight, low inventory market that you really can't compare those very well. In fact, I met with some repeat clients of mine. I had sold them their house. They talked to me about selling in the beginning of November. And I had told them a price. It's the worst. It happens to everyone, but I just saw their house list last week with another agent. I had told them about 900 and 925 and they wanted well over $1 million. And I said, you guys, it's not going to happen. Well, that was in the fall. And now here we are in January. They just listed for $999,000. $999, literally $1 shy of $1 million. And it sold, or it went pending after the first weekend. So it just shows you that, you know, maybe I was off in the fall, which, you know, absolutely could have been. But also you can push pricing right now more so than you could in the fall because the inventory is still so low. So that's a tough one. Like I said, I hate pricing homes. I sometimes I wonder why they have me teach this class of all the classes. There's others I'd rather teach. But when you're looking at your comparable, so let's step back to that. You're looking at, you know, you've pulled a radius search, let's say, or a neighborhood search, and you would really in a perfect world want to come up with 3 pendings and 3 sold. So you can use that. So you can do the, look at those accurately. And the hard part, like I said, right now is the pendings. What you want to do is you want to look at, okay, they should have sold in 3 days. I tell everyone right now, we're going to list on a Thursday and we're going to be sold by Monday. We're going to be pending by Monday. And so looking at those pendings, how long are those taking to sell? And you can assume, hopefully, that if it sold in 3 days, that it sold over list price. So then I'll get on the phone and I'll call each of those pending agents and I'll say, okay, how many offers did you get? And, you know, they're not supposed to legally tell you what it sold for, but usually you can get out of them, or at least a ballpark of what it sold for. And so then that's when you can say to your seller, okay, I called those 3 agents. A, that shows initiative, right? B, you can say, okay, they priced it this and they sold for this and they had 13 offers, or they had 9 offers, or they had 20 offers. And what I use that for is then to say, okay, those 20 buyers, 19 of them are still looking for a house. So we can be competitive in terms of pricing your house. Now, sometimes if there's somebody that's priced their house at the very top, you know, we're talking about a price range. Let's say it's 650 to 700. And I tell my clients 650, because if you start lower, you're going to end up higher. Let's say someone started at 710 because they didn't understand pricing strategy. Well, they probably only got 1 offer, right? They got the 1. And so they were at the very top. In fact, that reminds me, I showed a house this weekend and my client said, well, we loved it, but it was over our price range. I said, well, I'm looking at that house and it's 600,000. It's way overpriced. It comps out at 580. And I texted the agent. I said, hey, did you guys how many offers did you get? And he said, we got 1. And then the buyer backed out before we even got to sign it. He's like, if you act quickly, you can get it at 600. I was like, okay, well, that's great. But it's still, when it comps out, it's only at 580. So those were people that have pushed the pricing and they're hoping that somebody would just be so desperate that they'd say, yep, I know that's overpriced, but I need to snag it before somebody else does. So I've actually put a watch on that one to see what'll happen with it. So, you know, starting at the end, I always try to start my clients at the lower end of the price range. So going back to, did somebody say something? I can't.
No, I just cleared my throat. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Well, you talk about when you have some time, will you talk about seasonality of the market and how that's changed and whether it's still a factor?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I tell what I've been telling everybody at the listing appointments I've been going on right now is normally this time of year, we've got low inventory, oddly enough, normally you have high inventory and then it drops. That if you look back, and I have a really cool graphic that shows inventory over time of the last like 10, 15 years. But normally in the winter, we start out high and then the buyers all come in and it goes down. Right now, we are so low that for every listing that comes on, there's 20 buyers for it, right? So seasonality, meaning this is the time of year when all the buyers that, you know, done with holidays, they're ready to go and they want to get in. So I always tell sellers this time of year, get on before spring break. Because if you think about supply and demand, the most homes generally are on the market between, like, I'd say March and June. Seasonally in past years, July and August are kind of slow in Oregon. August is usually really slow, oddly. But right now I'm saying more than ever, get your house on the market now. Because when I do the comps and show them to a client, I'll say, look, here's the actives, here's the pendings, and then here's the solds. And 9 times out of 10, there's no actives because everything's pending and already sold that weekend. You want to be the only active because if you have no competition, people are going to fight over it to get it. If you go into a neighborhood and there's 3 actives, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what's going on here? Well, 2 are overpriced and 1 backs to a busy road. So then it's overpriced or they're waiting for someone that doesn't mind. And so in terms of seasonality, I say, get on, especially with interest rates going up, because you want to jump in before that happens if possible, right? Does that help, Phil?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
What
But yeah,
about-
spring break is kind of the turning point. I always say, just try to get on before spring break because there's a huge rush of people that don't go on until spring break because they want to get their kids through the end of the school year. You don't want to go on with them because then there's more for buyers to choose from and there's not as much pressure on the pricing.
Mhm. How do you explain to sellers, you know, we're seeing offers like 50, 60, even $100,000 over list. If a property comps out at 580, you know, is there, you know, what do you tell your sellers when they say, well, why can't we be at 6? Like you're telling me we're going to sell this for probably 620, 630 if I do list at 580. So why can't I just list it at 6? And then also the other part of that is when you're looking at the comparables to suggest that price range for the sellers, you know, do you go, you know, I guess how much importance do you put on trend to spend, right? Like you're saying, okay, this house comps out at 580, this is what the comp's telling, but I know from my experience, buyers are paying 50,000 over list right now. So, you know, how do you know it's smarter to, you know, list the price lower at 580 rather than 600 or something like that? If those are.
That's a great question. So in terms of my pricing strategy, so for example, the one we were staging today, when I first met with them, I told them 650 and that was, oh my gosh, probably 2 months ago now. Right. And so I just chatted with them again. I said, you guys, there's nothing on the market. Everything's selling really well. I really think we need to go to 690, 695. So 680 would never, I mean, like using that 580, that's kind of a weird one for me. If I thought a house comped out at 580, I would actually list it at 575. What a really good home in a really good neighborhood, the comps are almost, you don't need them because wherever you price it, it shoots up, right? Then your biggest issue is the appraisal gap. But like this one, I said, I think we should go 690 or 695 because I think you're going to go, you know, just over 725, maybe if we're lucky 750. But we needed to push it up. I listed one in Hillsborough 2 weeks ago, 550. We had 13 offers. I assumed for sure it would sell between 6 and 625. It sold for 615. In hindsight, could I have started at 575? Absolutely. When I comped it out the first time, the comps weren't there for that. But then what happened is this January, everybody jumped off the fence to buy us. We had way more even buyers than we ever thought we were going to. So then it was just the challenge of, you know, the gap between what is it comp out at and then what is it appraised at. And interestingly, that one appraised at 610. It did not appraise for 615. We were pretty happy though, because the buyer's agent, I thought it would probably appraise about 590. So appraised higher than we thought. But I always try and go on the lower end. Usually I'll give someone, I mean, depending on the price point, a lot I do in the like 600, 700, 800. So you can have a little bit wider of a span, but let's say it's a $400,000 house. We're only gonna go up or down by 10,000 at 7 or 750. That's a much larger span of that you can play with. And so I still think it's better to go on the low side. I say it's like creating that feeding frenzy. When you go to Target and there's an end cap and it says clearance and it's bright yellow and bright red, well, me anyway, I love sales, right? So I'm drawn to it. I'm like, ooh, I'll go there instead. But then when you look close at it, it's like, oh, it's only $1 off. But in real estate, what you want to know is that if you can create that feeding frenzy, the buyers will trip over themselves by, knocking that price up versus starting high. The only time I start high is if it's a really unique property, which I work a lot of country properties, so that does tend to happen to me. And in that case, I say, hey, we don't know who is waiting out there just for this exact house. Sometimes it's kind of a niche house, and a niche buyer knows not much comes along that they want. So you actually can kind of set the price. Those are the ones only time that I'll say, let's start a little bit high. And then if it hasn't sold in 2 weeks or a month, we'll come down. If you were in town in a very, like I said, homogeneous neighborhood, and let's say you priced at 400 because everyone else was selling about 390 and you thought, oh, we'll get ahead of it. If nothing happened and you didn't sell in the first weekend, you're overpriced. Absolutely. Because this market will tell you that right away. I say, if we haven't sold by Monday, we priced it incorrectly. So then in terms of pricing, things to think about when you're new. One levels really only compare with one levels. Split levels and tri-levels are in a whole little ball game by themselves. You really can't compare them to a traditional 2-level house or a 1-level house because they're a niche market in themselves. 2-level houses, and then houses with basements, you have to be really careful, like, is the basement finished or is the attic finished, that kind of thing. But in the square footage, you really have to kind of figure out which is the finished square footage. The one I'm putting on the market that we staged today has an unfinished basement. Lucky for us, we get to include that in the square footage, so it'll show up looking larger. But when an appraisal happens, they're not going to weigh that square footage as heavily. So we have to think about that in terms of an appraisal as well.
Does the finished basement or anywhere that's finished, does it have to have permits to be included in the livable square footage, or just quote unquote finished?
No, it's whatever's in the tax record. So in terms of finished, I think that's more just like drywall, heating, actual finishes versus like the one that I'm doing is, the open framing and concrete floors. You wouldn't want to live down there.
But it seems like there's a difference between what's in a lot of tax records versus what people are marketing. Are you familiar with the marketing rules on what people can say it is or what they put? I feel like even in the MLS, I've seen several times where the square footage does not match up. I mean, just the house we went pending on this last weekend, I think I set up an appraisal or excuse me, an inspection, and it like auto-populated it at like 2,500 square feet. And the inspector came back and said, hey, I got a tax report that says this is actually a 4,000 square foot house. And then when I went back to the MLS to confirm, it was like a 4,200 square foot house. So it seems like there's a lot of variance out there about square footage and what to price against and things like that. So what's your guidance on square footage? You go with like the highest last document. If you go back to the old MLS listing, let's say it sold 5 years ago, do you use that agent's supposed square footage, or do you use what the seller tells you they think it is? Or
that's a great question. I always go for the most square footage possible. So if you can get it out of the tax record, great. Now a basement. So when I first started in 2003, I guess, or 2004, whenever that was, 2003, the East Side homes in Portland all had basements, right? Or had an unfinished attic that, someone kind of made as a wonky bonus room. You could not count that square footage. Then about, I don't know, I think honestly, only like 2 years into my career, RMLS said all square footage is square footage. And so you're supposed to indicate in RMLS, like let's say the basement is unfinished. Like I will do that on my listing today. But on this one, this is a great example, Phil, this should help, because the last listing was only 2 years ago. It did include the basement, but it did not include a sun porch. So the my clients had an appraisal, obviously, when they purchased it. The appraiser did not count the sun porch area. He put a little dotted line around it because I think he didn't think it was heated. Well, my clients blew out the doorway and made it part of the kitchen. So it's heated now. It's totally finished. So I actually took the square footage, even though it was only like 70 or 90 square feet. That really does make a difference, right? It pushed us into and over the 2,000 mark, which if a buyer is searching their criteria by square footage, I'm now going to get into that next, class, so to speak. And so like, in the listing then where it says tax, or what do you call it, tax square footage source, we'll put appraisal on that one, and we will attach a copy of the appraiser's floor plan to the listing to verify that. And then on some houses where I have a question, or I feel like the house is bigger or something happened, because a lot of City of Portland and City of Hillsborough require the home energy score. The home energy score company I use, if you bundle it and also get a floor plan drawn with the measurements, they give you a deal. And so what I do is my client is charged the amount for the home energy score, and then I get the floor plan for like less than $100 because they've already done all that anyway. And then I will use that as my square footage source, because often that'll come in higher, or at least then we have an exact source. Because right, every once in a while you sell a house that you really don't know, the tax records don't feel right, or there's no RMLS history, or they don't match. Then it is nice to have one more source.
Do you have to have any kind of legal language about that source, like buyer to verify, or my square?
That's all in RMLS, right? Buyer has to verify everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see
If
that.
you've attached it to the listing, it's on the shoulders at that point of the measuring company.
Okay, so you can do that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the space needing to be heated. I'm not familiar with that. Are there certain like appraisal requirements for the square footage to be?
I believe there is, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I think so.
Okay, because like if you had a finished basement, for example, but you didn't have a heat source necessarily, like.
That would be debatable, right? Because there's been times where I've sold a daylight ranch and the appraiser will count the square footage in the, even though it's a totally perfect living room because it's sub halfway underground or whatever, they only value the square footage at half of what they did up top. Now that was quite a few years ago now. I haven't run into that in quite some time, but I remember we battled that for a while.
I think on the tax records on the MLS, there's a few different square footage things where it says like main square footage and then maybe lower square footage, if I remember. And then like a third one might say like total square footage.
Mm-hmm.
So do you automatically always use like total square footage, or does it really depend on whether it's like a finished basement to use the total? Otherwise you just use the main number.
I use all of it, every square foot there is, even if it's not finished. That's legal.
Just always use the total square
Yeah.
foot of the house. Okay.
Yeah. If someone didn't include it, it sounds like the one you guys went pending on, I think they screwed up then.
Yeah, possibly.
But maybe that benefited you.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I think the inspection got more expensive, but.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. That's okay. So in terms of then, so we'll jump back a little bit. So when I'm looking in RMLS for comparable properties, you get your search results page, right? So my first page of my CMA, which I really don't have a fancy CMA program, is I just print out that page. So it shows the actives, the pendings, and the solds. And I really focus on, and I mean, I'm happy to walk through this because everybody has a little different RMLS. Our RMLS, that search results page, you can customize it and you can say, I want to look at the days on market, like, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, days on market, original price versus sold price. Because to me, that is so critical to say, okay, look, this one's listed at this, sold at this, listed at this, sold at this. And so you can see a very clear pattern of the ones that sold in 2, 3, 4 days, they all almost went over list price. And then the ones like there's going to be an outlier that says this one was on the market for 35, 65, 165 days. Those are the ones you're going to see it started at a list price and then it went down, right? Because they overpriced it either by error or by accident or anything like that. So those are always really important to look at. If you're in a very easy cookie cutter neighborhood, you can use the average per square foot price and kind of figure out, okay, is my listing above average? Is it average? Is it below average? And figure out, that at least gives you a baseline of maybe where to start with pricing and using the square footage and the average per square foot price. If you look at days on market, I used to be a teacher, so I always laugh at that. The average days on market is not necessarily the most accurate. What you want to do is look at the median days on market, because that shows truly what most of the homes sold for. And it kind of helps throw those outliers out. And in fact, if there's a really bad outlier and I don't need it, I'll just throw that out. And then I try to prepare as much as I can before I go to the house. I like to do a one-step listing presentation as much as I can. So on the phone, before I've gone out to this house, I have a whole list of questions I've asked, like how old is your roof, your furnace, your hot water heater? When was last time the exterior was painted? What kind of siding do you have? What kind of conditions it's in? I do country property, so I'll ask about their well, their septic. Did you have a radon test? I always say, what vintage is your kitchen? Because someone will be like, oh yeah, I remodeled it. Well, it turns out they remodeled it 15, 20 years ago. So is that really relevant anymore? So I find out as much as I can ahead of time so that I can go in with a price point that I think it's going to be. And then once I see it, I'll have a better idea once I get there. Now, sometimes I get there or I don't have enough information going into it. And I'll just say, I'm going to meet with you and then I'm going to have to give you a price afterward. But if anytime you can, it's better to go in with a price in mind. Any questions on that?
I have a question. So when you go to ask your questions, how is there like a standard, like where do you get your questions from, if that makes sense? Like, how do you know, like, okay, always ask about the roof, always ask about, like, did you kind of like make up your own list, or is there like a guideline of like, this is like kind of standard practice, or?
Yeah, no, there are lists upon lists. This industry is not about inventing anything new. It's just using what everybody else has already created for you.
Right.
And it's funny that you say that because I'm in January clean and purge mode. My husband and I are, and I looked somewhere, I was like, I found my old work backpack and it was full of stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't used this in probably a year and a half. Was this important stuff? And one of the things in there is I used to use like neon paper, fluorescent paper. And one of them was my neon orange, like, here's all the questions to ask sellers. I didn't make it up. I got it from some Keller Williams source. So I wish I was smart enough to be able to tell you where to find it in Keller Williams. I don't. If you ask your TL or your productivity coach, they might be able to tell you what it is. Otherwise, if you shoot me an email, I'm happy to scan in the one I have, or I'm sure I've got a soft copy because obviously I was printing it. So I can send you the PDF of the one I have, but it has a really handy list. It includes things like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your motivation? I always say in a perfect world, tell me what date you picture yourself handing off the key and going on to your next destination, things like that, because it helps you judge when you get the client that says, oh, we're not in a hurry. Oh my God, that's like the last thing you want to hear. Cause it's like, no, this market, you need to be ready to go because we're going to sell your house. I'm not in this market to just put a sign in the ground and wait for you to get the price you want. We're going to price it to get the price the market will bear, and then you're gone. So things like, I'm trying to think what else is on there. I always ask about flooring and just the big stuff.
What about if their property has like taxes due or, things like that, where like, what would you, because a lot of the times when I've talked to people, they like have no idea where to go with like things involving taxes, or there was something similar to that where they owed money on their house. They own their house, but like owed money on it, if that makes sense, like liens and stuff like that.
Great question. So I always ask, how much do you owe on your house? Most people will tell you no problem. Do you have a HELOC? Like, do you have 1 or 2 loans? I don't run into that many people that have additional liens. You could just make that one of your questions. Like, do you have any other liens on the house that you know about? Most times I would say the answer is no. My assistant always pulls the trio, the property trio, the minute I know I'm going somewhere, so we can see anything that's there. That doesn't always show liens, but it should show most things. If you're concerned, you could have your title company, customer service pull a, not a prelim, but see if there's any other liens on there. Taxes, I think that'll show us paid or not on the trio, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But excellent questions. Like if you're working with a niche of people that, back in the short sale days, you always had to ask like, okay, where else do you owe money?
Where do you get the trio? What's at the?
You're just your customer service rep. Like I use WFG, so we just email the WFG customer service rep and she sends it to us.
Okay. And what's included in the trio?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I would have to pull up my screen. So you have the
Taxes,
plat, you have the legal
freedom.
description.
Yeah.
There's 3 things. It's a trio. There's 3 things.
Is it taxes, prelim?
I think it's your taxes, because often, I don't know if
Let's
you
see,
guys have
Conrad.
noticed, but RMLS tax mains are really behind with the current tax year. So it's not the current year. You have to actually get that from the title company to make sure you put the right tax amount in when you're listing a house. So that's on there as well. In the plat. Okay, so then pulling your comps again, you're looking at the actives, the pendings, the solds, and hopefully, you know, it's pretty easy, cut and dry. And then you're looking at them in all the pictures, you're making whatever calls you can to the other agents to find out, you know, what did happen? Did they have 13 offers? Did they have to make a repair concession? I did one recently that I said, you're going to need a new roof. I think this is going to come up when we go to sell your house. And he said, no one else has needed new roofs in this neighborhood. Well, it was really weird because then I called around and sure enough, several, you know, agents to get through the transaction had to negotiate a new roof. People always hear what they want to hear. They just tend to ignore what, you know, is going to cost them money or they don't want to hear. So that's something to think about too, is what concessions, if you look at the vintage of the house, the year it was built, what potential things are going to come up in that repair addendum. If it's 2000, the year 2000 or 2000, even 2005 right now, you may be looking at a new roof. So you got to walk through some of that with your clients during I usually do that during the walkthrough, initial walkthrough. So let me peek through these slides really quick to see if I'm missing anything. Okay, so no, actually on page 21, that's interesting because it says, you know, if your sellers want to go above your recommended price, you can always say, well, I just don't think it's going to appraise. Well, they may or may not care about that, but I do always say, man, if we go high, here's what buyers are coming in with. Buyers are coming in today. If we're lucky enough to get a bidding war, which we should. We're going to see 10 offers and we're going to see anything from the buyer will pay this amount and that's it. Or the buyer will pay this amount and they're going to waive the appraisal, or they're going to pay what's called appraisal gap coverage. And that could range from my buyer will bring in $10,000 cash or $25,000 cash or $50,000 cash to cover that appraisal gap. And that's the amount between the actual appraisal, what the appraiser says it's worth, and then the sale price the buyer and seller agreed on. We call that the appraisal gap. So we can always hope that there's cash. 20% of buyers in Oregon are cash buyers right now. That's always nice to have, and or some sort of appraisal gap coverage. So you can try that. The other thing is if a seller wants to go higher than I recommend, I say, okay, that's your try it price. I'm game, but I'm not gonna, your try it price can't be above this. So usually I'll put a cap on. This is the highest I'm comfortable with. And if it hasn't sold in 1 week, we have to reduce the price, because the longer you are on the market in this market, a seller's market, the minute you go over a week or two, buyers see that house on Redfin and they're gonna say, ew, what's wrong with it? Why hasn't it sold? Why is it still on the market? Ugh. And they start wondering, and you don't want buyers wondering. You want that feeding frenzy where people are tripping over themselves to buy it, because the minute you go over that week mark, you're not getting over full price. You're getting at or under full price. So that's the thing I do, is I say, I'll try it, but that's it. Sometimes the dang thing sells and they're thrilled and you're like, okay, I was wrong, and that's okay. And other times you get to say, I told you so. Now we get to lower the price. And depending on the price point, 100%, sometimes you don't know. Like I listed one at 1.7 earlier in the year, probably about, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 months ago. And it was really unique, and it cited to a really busy road, which affected it way more than we thought. Plus it had some other quirky things. So about once every month to 2 months, we lowered the price by $50,000 to $100,000. And we ended up selling for 1.4. Was I wrong? Yeah. Were they wrong? Yeah. Did it finally sell? Yeah. But then your seller is counting on you to give them the feedback of, we need to lower the price. Don't ever be afraid then to say, God, we missed the mark on that one, but let's react quickly before the market takes care of it for us, right? Because you don't want that why is it still on the market? I'm the same way. I'll see something has been on the market for 3 weeks. I'm like, oh God, what's wrong with it? This is terrible. That's not how it was when I first started. I mean, homes routinely took 2 to 3 months to sell. So any questions on that?
I'm just curious off the bat, when did we turn into a seller's market? Do you remember what year that was?
Oh my gosh. Well, we've been in the seller's market for since 2012, 13, 14, somewhere in there. Because I used to say, okay, economic cycle is 7 years, right? So I started in 2003 It was incredible, incredible, incredible. 2006 was like amazing. 2007, the bottom started to drop out. 2008, actually I had a decent year, but it was dropping out. And then 2009, 10, 11 sucked. I only sold like 17 to 18 homes in a year. And the houses were on the market forever, and you had short sales, and you just, oh, it was rough. And then I remember it started to turn in 2012. And then, in fact, Facebook shows you the memories in the morning. This morning, I almost screen captured it. It said, if you wanted to buy a house at the bottom, that was yesterday. The market's shooting up. So truly, I mean, we've been shooting up since 2012. It's 10 years. We've blown past the economic cycle. And right now, obviously, COVID affected that 2 years ago. It's just interesting. It's a stronger seller's market. It needs to slow down. It cannot continue at this pace. It's not good. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so per square foot price, you just have to be really careful with that. If you have a lot of very similar homes, you can absolutely use that. It's easy. Newer homes, Bethany, all those homes, that's easy, but you have to be really careful. Like I said, I work acreage property. We cannot use the per square foot price. It does not help at all. Okay, this does not look like anything very helpful. That does not seem right, does it? Hold on, you guys. I have something else here. How do I see my screen? There we go. Here's an instructor manual. Does this help? Is this what you guys have? No, that's all instructor stuff, right? Do any of these pages look familiar to you?
I'm not in this program, so I have no idea. That's why I'm not answering.
You're just auditing this class.
Yeah, well, I'm in a different Keller Williams thing, but I'm still trying to like learn when I can. So these ones are like free to me on certain days. So I'm not answering. I don't have that packet.
There you go. Okay, well, I'm still not clear on these. So okay, let's go through these then. We talked about all that. Look at that. That's great. Okay. Actually, here's a good screen. So this just talks about, I always say there's the 3 factors or 4 factors. I use 3 in real estate. Is obviously you've got location. You heard the old mantra, location, location, location. And that's very true. The better your location, the more you're going to get. So do you back to a green belt? Are you a corner lot? Those factors all do take into account. So when you're somewhere along the way, that was a new construction house and the builder charged a lot premium because it was a corner lot or a back to, green belt. Do they get that back? Depends on the market. Right now, sure. In a buyer's market, no, you don't get that back. You lost that money. But you can't change the location. So that's a factor we can't change. Condition. Can our seller change the condition of their house? Absolutely. Is that our first job, is to walk through that house and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. And here's the things that are going to be free and elbow grease, and I expect you to get them done. Here are the things that are going to cost you a little bit, and I would really encourage you to get them done, because even in a seller's market, the little things you can do make a difference. And then here's the really big ticket items that in this market, let's skip that. As the chances are this buyer is so excited that your house came on the market that they're going to be willing to overlook some things. So things that not everybody's doing right now is we're not putting a new roof on right away. Let's negotiate that. Exterior paint, I mean, unless it just looks hideous or, otherwise you can't really get a house painted this time of year anyway. So we're negotiating that. One of the big questions is always brass. Oh God, you still have brass hardware. Do we get rid of it? Do we not? I still love for people to get rid of it because that's a pretty inexpensive thing to do. But it's just things like that. So location, condition, and then price. And can we affect price? Absolutely, right? We can totally affect price. So figure out the things that we can do to improve to get the maximum price possible. Okay, so yeah, it is really important for you guys to know the stats in your area. If you're not using the TMO, if you're in a Keller Williams office that provides those TMO stats for you, those are really useful, really helpful when you go on a listing appointment. I highlight the price point that I think the client will end up in, the seller, and I say, okay, here's your average days on market. Here's your, here's where things are at. How many homes are on the market? That's a good one too. So you guys, when you go to do a CMA, you're going to say, okay, here's the homes that are in your exact neighborhood. here's the homes that are within, like, let's say a mile. And you have to remember that a buyer is not just looking in that one neighborhood. They're looking in the city. They're looking 2 or 3 cities. So if we went and said, your house is worth 500, we think your house will sell for 500,000. If you just pulled a search for the nearest, 2 miles, 5 miles even, how many homes does this buyer have to look at 500,000? That's helpful. And sometimes will help them understand how the supply and demand works. If you can just pick, if you're listening to Chris Suarez and any of his presentations, pick 1 or 2 number statistics and just memorize that. And then you spit it out and you sound like a genius. Okay.
Do you ever feel
No,
like
what's
the TMO is off though? Like I brought
Behind?
the team up with I think a buyer, yeah, like the behind, and it's like, it just kind of seems off. Like, how is that like I guess it was the 500 to 5 to 600 price point on the GMO yesterday. And I was telling my buyer, what things are going over the list in the neighborhood. And it said like 102% or 103% of list. And it must be.
Oh, you froze up. Bill, you're frozen.
Just kind of go with it.
Okay. You froze up there for a moment, but what I totally understand what you're saying is because the TMO is area by area, it's a huge broad scope, right? So, and it's taking into account, like we said, the outliers that are on the market forever, and then they had to come down in price. And so that's fine for a huge overall look at it, but then you just dial it down so that you know exactly what the homes in that neighborhood are selling for. But I tell everyone right now, everything's selling between 2 to 10% over list price. So be prepared. I tell my buyers, if you can buy up to 500, we're looking at 450. Don't look at dime over 450, right? Because you've got to have room to upbid to 500. There are exceptions to that. Like I said, that one I showed yesterday, it was 600. It was not worth 600. But you really have to know your market and look at each comp individually to know something like that. Okay. This is literally your like real estate 101 graph. It's really important to price it exactly where it should be or under. And so here's where we talk about what you can.
I don't know about everybody else, but I can't really see what you're looking at.
You can't see it?
No, I'm still on price to sell slide for PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's all we see. Just the price to
Seriously?
sell.
You might have to
Because
stop
you are
sharing and then
sharing.
reshare again.
Really, you guys? Oh my God. Okay, what if I just close this? Screen sharing is stopped for real?
So then share again what you had. That should work. There we go.
Okay, well, I was looking at this and I said that's real estate 101. You guys can see that graph bullseye thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically if you can price at or below, the market will react and shoot it up. So we were just saying, knowing what you can and can't control. And that's, again, what I was talking about, like location, condition, and price. Window of opportunity, again, that's a classic graph. I have that in my seller and my buyer packets, right? It used to be 2 weeks. And now, honestly, it's a week. If the listing hasn't sold, the price is too high. So the rule of thumb when you're talking to sellers is, well, this is old rule of thumb. Now it seems like even different. If you get 10 showings without an offer, 10 days without a showing, you're overpriced. I had a listing that went on last weekend. It had 33 showings and no offers. It was fugly. Oh my God. It has a catio that's like 20 by 30 on the back that looks like it housed a lion, not 12 rescue cats. I mean, the floor plan's funky. And I said to my seller on Tuesday, I said, all right, 33 showings. We are not in the right price point. I said, we're going to reduce the price. And we were at 390. I wanted to reduce the price to 380 to 375. I said, if nothing happens by Friday, we're doing it. And then we got an offer. We got 2 offers. Finally, it is funny how that happened. We say finally a week later. That's funny. We sold for 370. So did I miss the mark on pricing? Sure. Did we react quickly? And did she trust me so that when the offer came in low, she understood that I still had her best interest in mind? And that's that trust you have to build along the way, so that if it does have to sell lower, they are okay with that rather than holding out for full price. At that point, you're not going to get full price.
Do you feel like there's a certain type of property or a certain price point where it is closer to 10 days or 2 weeks before you do a price drop, or is it across the board a week it should be sold?
Definitely house by house, right? I mean, I'd say anything over probably $1.3 million, it could take longer to sell, or if it's a niche home, like I have a log cabin coming up that'll be between 1.5 and $1.7 million. It's in a funky area. There's not going to be, it's a double niche actually, right? It's a log cabin in a funky area. So there's not going to be as many buyers. So we're going to hold on to that price probably a month at a time or 2 months at a time and judge it by what our activity level is before I drop the price. But if I'm in town and everything else is going, a week to 2 weeks, 2 weeks tops, and then you're dropping the price.
And so what's the price point drops that you go for? Is it like over $1 million, you drop by 50,000?
50 to 100.
So if you have a
100 if
property
you
like
can.
390, you're going to drop that, what, 10 grand or something a shot?
That one I was gonna do 10 grand. Anything over about 450, I make them drop 25,000 because the script is, so here's my script I use with clients. And I say, okay, right now the ocean is, it's a fishing analogy and I'm not a fisherman. So I always make a joke about that too. But in the ocean, in the pond are all the buyers, right? They're all the little fishies and they're waiting. They're so excited to get fed. They're going to get fed the newest house. Your house, your listing is going to be feeding them and they're all going to go crazy trying to get the house, right? And so if then you don't sell in the first week, your house becomes, you're in the pond. And now you're in the pond with these few other houses that haven't sold. You're bobbing around. You're waiting for the next buyer to enter the market, right? That is the food. And you have to wait longer for more buyers to enter the market. So we don't want to be sitting there bobbing around waiting for them. We've got to then get to the next pond. To get to the next pond or pool, you have to drop your price point by $25,000 to get to the next set of buyers. If you drop it 5 or 10, it's the same buyers. They've already rejected you, right? They're going to reject you again just for that. 5 or 10,000 can make a difference. $20,000 to $25,000, that's a different buyer pool. Even like the couple that, they said 600 is too much. I said, well, if I can get it for you at 580, would you buy it? You're in a different buyer pool. So you've got to get that down. Back when I started, it was like you would price drop by 1,000 or 2,000, 5,000 max. It's a whole different strategy now. Let's see. This is just talking about in a rising market, which obviously that's when we're in. The price will be drawn up. Don't be afraid to be honest. Absolutely. The log cabin I met with, they said, because I always ask, here's a question you guys need to ask too. Well, what do you think your home is worth? Or in a perfect world, what do you want to sell your house for? I would say 80% of the people will tell you. And the other 20% say, no, that's for you to figure out. That's why you're here. They don't like to say it, but most people will just tell you. And I think that's really important. And if you can find out before you go, it's important too, because you need to know going into it, is my price aligning with what they think it's worth or what they want? Sometimes they realize in their heart of hearts, it's not worth that, but they think they have to get a certain number out to get that. So like the log cabin people, they said, we want 2 million. I was like, okay, cool. So I think that's gonna be a tough stretch. So then my email back to them with the pricing, I said, I crunched the numbers every which way and I am so sorry. I just am not seeing 2 million. So I said, I feel 100% confident it will sell for this. I'm pretty confident it will sell for this. My confidence is waning at 1.7. So if you want to start at 1.7, let's start there. I think 2 million is just gonna be crickets and you're not even gonna get showings at that point. So if you're honest with them up front, even at the risk of maybe being wrong, that is important. There are agents out there that will do what's called buying the listing. They will tell that client, that seller, whatever the house is worth, that's what the seller thinks it's worth. They'll match that price in order to get the listing, and then they're just gonna beat them up for a price reduction every few weeks until it gets sold. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. Okay, let's see what I'll share. Be honest. When you guys are practicing your scripts, I'm not good at scripts. I've developed my own over the years. Oh my gosh, my computer's about to die. Hold on, I gotta get a charger here. Sorry, you guys, hold on, I can't multitask. Let me get a charger for my computer. Okay. The line of, do you want me to tell you the truth or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? I change that up a little bit and I just say, hey, I'd rather tell you the truth than tell you what you want to hear because we're not aligned on that. And I'd rather disappoint you now than if we go to try to sell for that and that price isn't working. And then this page talks about, again, what we've already talked about, how the market's going to tell us what it's worth. We're going to skip that. We kind of already have talked about this. Motivation and goals and helping your seller account for that price. If you give them a range, you can say, I recommend this, or I recommend within this range. You guys can start anywhere within this range. And give them some clients want to have some control. Others want you to make all the decisions, and you just have to kind of get to know personality types right over time to figure that out. So like I said, I don't have a fancy CMA program. If you are brand new, you will probably have more confidence going into a listing appointment. If you do have, let's say, a fancier, thank you so much, fancier looking CMA program. So you might look into Cloud CMA. That's a really easy, fairly inexpensive one. Like our RMLS does have a CMA program, free, right? So the one thing with using a CMA program, I would caution you on is do not let it pick the comparables for you. Actually, just had a very seasoned agent call me, and her buyer was very upset. She says, hey, you had a listing on such and such road. My buyer's very upset because he's buying in the house around the corner. And when I sent him the comps for it to determine what price we wanted to offer, I missed your listing. And she says, I let the computer pick the comparables. I guess I shouldn't have done that. That is really a no-no, right? Because you need to look at each one. Is it a comparable or not? Don't be a Zillow. Don't let the computer, do that for you. But it is really important to do that. So if you pay for a cloud or like Cloud CMA, there's probably other ones out there, that will help give you a little bit more confidence because you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I'm brand new. The seller's going to know that. What if they ask me how long I've been doing it? And then sometimes you can kind of wow them, little smoke and mirrors, right? Look at this beautiful CMA and take the pressure off of you and you're focused on the CMA. I have done that. I've tried it over the years. It is CMA program is really nice when you're working with people out of state because all you can do is email it to them. I've gone back to just literally, I print out my search results page and then I print out the agent abbreviated that goes with each comparable property. I also sometimes ahead of time will say, I will email the client and say, hey, in preparation for a meeting tomorrow, here are the comparable properties or comparable sales for your house. Please look through the pictures so we can be ready to discuss how your house compares to these. Because sometimes they really have not looked through the comparable properties and they'll say, well, but my house is worth this. And I'll say, oh, does your house have the same brand new spanking kitchen than this one does? Or does it have this amazing outdoor area? Sometimes that helps at least getting them mentally prepared for that.
How long do your listing appointments last?
They're an hour. It's about a half an hour of getting to know you, building rapport, trust. I'm big into mirroring and matching. So if I can go as redneck as that to as luxury, I struggle more on the luxury end. So I'll be like, oh my God, that closet's amazing, as you're like, the closet's bigger than your house. But I can talk tractor speak for hours. So really mirroring and matching the potential client, right? So not to say becoming at one with them, but really finding things you can relate on, because the more things you can relate to, so many people aren't necessarily looking for the best price. And I always say, you're looking for someone, we're going into a mini relationship for the next month to 6 months, right? Hopefully 3 months or less. Can we just talk about things on a daily basis? Do you feel comfortable with me? Can I make you feel confident and laugh? We need to be compatible. And I always say that. So that's why I think building rapport is so important during that CMA, sometimes more important than the pricing. And especially if you are brand new, that again takes the focus off when someone says, what are you doing to market my house? Because I've been doing it long enough, my line is, I sell 70 homes a year. Clearly what I do works. Do you really want me to go into the details of it? And usually then they just don't say anything. So there's ways to diffuse and get around that question if you are nervous about that. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks. And so your process is you do a pre-listing questionnaire, then you go, you spend an hour with them in person, and then you just email them your pricing recommendations, low, medium, and high.
Yeah, so again, my preference is to come up with a price there. And then if I can't, what I say is I hate giving price over email, but obviously that's the easiest way, right? You could call them and I probably should, but it's nice to have something in writing in front of them. I'm going to give you a pricing recommendation. I'm going to, this is why I always ask what people owe, because I want to know, I'm going to prepare what's called an estimated net proceeds for you. And that's going to take into account the sale price we think. And I never go in the high end. So if I say like, for the house that I listed at 550 and I thought it would sell between 6 and 625, I think the highest one I did for them was 6. I say anything over that is the icing on the cake. You know, it's the cherry on top. Let's not count on that. Let's just go conservative and say, okay, worst case scenario, if it's sold for list price, here's how much you're going to walk away with at the end of the day. If it gets in a bidding war and we get to here, here's how much you're going to walk away with. If the bidding war goes bonkers, that's awesome. Let's not even go there. Let's hope we go there, but I'm not going to give you an estimated net proceeds based on that. So I usually give them 2 or 3 different estimated net proceeds. And in the next, you guys, that you can do that straight out of RMLS. If you're using Portland's RMLS, I'm sure the other RMLSs have the same thing. Some people use their title company rep for that. I don't do that. I'm very OCD controlling. I need to know exactly what numbers are going in there. I always break out my commission as the listing agent versus the buyer's agent commission. Someone taught me that years ago, because if you just put in your straight percentage, whatever that is, let's just say it's 5%. That looks like a huge chunk of change. And frankly, it is. Like they're selling a $400,000 house and there goes 20 grand right off the bat. They don't like to see that. So I break it out into here's what my team gets and here's what I give the buyer's agent or the buyer's agent gets. And so I know it's just psychological. It's all the same amount of money, but I think it helps people see that you don't get all that money. And then like if it's a property in Washington County, you always check the box because there's the property transfer tax. Washington County is the only one that has that. If it's septic, home on a septic or a well, I will include some of the seller costs associated with that. If it's a home in City of Portland or City of Hillsborough, I will put in the cost for the home energy score so that they can really understand where the costs go and what they will potentially walk away with. And I email that. So at any rate, where I was going with that is that if I have to email it, I end with, before I leave the in-person, I'll say, I'm going to email you a price. I hate not being able to sit there and discuss it like what we would do right now. So please do not hesitate to call me if you have questions. What I should do if I'm an amazing agent is I'd email it and then call and say, have you had time to go over this? I'd like to discuss it with you. I'm really bad about doing that. I usually rely on them to get back to me. But this guide here is pretty, you know, what is pretty impressive, like, or what you do, you just say, okay, here's the recommended list price for what I would do.
What do you do if the seller wants to know what they can sell for if they do, you know, certain fixes to the house or upgrades or something like that, without it getting too overwhelming or too many numbers thrown at them? Do you just, you know, get them to do the upgrades, or just say, hey, you know, like I'm going to give you the first 3 prices that are just, you know, as is, or how does that look usually?
It's a good question. There's a list of like, not to say non-negotiable, but I'll leave them with a list of here's the things you really just have to do to go on the market. Here's the things that would be nice to do. And it's hard to put a price on what that will get you, but just know that a buyer walking through is going to, if your home isn't beautifully staged, they're going to start nitpicking things. Sure, they're super excited that your house is on the market, but they will potentially be calculating, okay, there's, here's a hallway and I can see 4 different colors of carpet. I showed a house this weekend that must have had 6 different colors of pergo and wood laminate floors and this, that, and the other. I was like, oh my God, you guys, this is going to cost a fortune to fix all this. So if a good buyer's agent is going through there and saying, hey, you're going to need to do this, that, and the other, they are slowly saying, instead of offering 600, maybe we only offer 590. So anything little that they can do, getting the carpets clean, getting the, you know, there's cleaning and then there's updates. But I don't ever really tell in this market, I don't say, okay, you need to go put in granite counter. But I guess, Phil, to answer your question, like the log cabin, super dated, neat and impressive and cool, but it has all brass still. I was like, I really think for you guys to get top dollar at 1.7, switch out your brass. The master bathrooms kind of needed some help. So she put in a $6,000 vanity, or she's about to. Can I quantify what that's going to get her back? No. Is it going to get back at least 6,000? Probably. Is it going to sell better and sell faster? Absolutely.
So do you, for price recommendations, do you just kind of keep that stuff off and just say, here, look, let's, sell it
Yeah.
for 1.7, and if you get it for more
Yeah.
based off of these recommendations, then great, but okay. Because that's what we kind of come up against sometimes is where, there's like 4 different scenarios that you're supposed to price out, and it's like, who
That's too
knows?
much work. In this market, it's going to sell. It's like, do you want to get 450 or do you want to get 475? Or if you want to get in the 5s, then yeah, you're going to have to do all these things that you should have done while you lived there, but you didn't now. Do you really want to do them for someone else? Hardwood floors, like refinishing hardwood floors. I still think, back in the market 3 years ago, we are like, yeah, you need to get these hardwood floors refinished. Like people will ask you, oh, should I really need to replace the carpet, but doesn't a buyer want to pick the carpet they want? Can I offer a carpet credit? There's carpet that needs to be replaced, and then there's just nasty, gross stuff. I always say, no, just get the new carpet. They're not going to care that it's not exactly the color they wanted. They're going to walk in and be like, I can move in right now. But if they walk in and start saying, ew, the carpet's gross, they're going to start looking around for whatever else is gross and that they're going to have to do. But if as much as you can to dial it in, it's really, really helpful. Paint. I'm always asking people to paint out bright colors, reds, still a lot of maroons out there. I always ask them to get rid of those, going with a grayish or a white right now. I tell everybody, just sit down with a glass of wine on the floor and scooch along and repaint your trim, right? Like fresh trim always makes such a difference. But can I quantify how much that's going to get you? No. Oh my God, did I go through this whole thing already? Why is it important to properly price a home? So we talked about that, right? I always say, you guys, my job, people are picking their homes. It's like Tinder. They're picking dates on the internet right now. I haven't dated in probably, oh my God, 30 years. So I don't know what that's like, but I do pick a lot of homes online, right? So I'm swiping through pictures, and you have like 5 shots of your house before a buyer is going to say like, yeah, let's get there. Or I don't know, it's not speaking to me. So my job as a listing agent is I've got to get people to fall in love with your house online. Right. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to have it professionally staged, and we're going to have it professionally photographed. And the stage is going to go through to make sure that when the photos get taken, people are seeing your house and not the back of your couch or your grandma's clown, figurine collection. Those are so important. And because my job is to get the most amount of people to your home. The more people I can get to your home, the better odds we have of a bidding war. The more bids we have, the higher it's going to end up. And so that's why pricing it well, but also presentation is huge, absolutely huge. So the 4 factors that drive price, obviously size, condition, amenities, all of that is important. Looks like I'm telling you the answers, they're in red. You can read them yourself. Your window of opportunity, you need to go in with confidence, say, I'm going to put your house on the market on a Thursday. I'm going to have it pending by Monday. If you say that with confidence, when you've priced it correctly, it's going to make you look like a rock star.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have a line for the newbies like me to go in and actually win like their like really confidence, so they can be confident with us when they're listing it with us? Like a line, like a good line at the beginning, not like after where you show them, oh yeah, this is what we're gonna do, like taking pictures and doing this, but before that, like, do you have a good lines for that?
I would say generally you just, fake it till you make it, right? If you go in with confidence, they're not going to ask you the questions that you think they're going to ask you. Focus on them, ask lots of questions of them. And if you can keep them talking, you're going to find out more about them, and they're not going to have time to ask you questions right back. But that's always important. You go through your presentation. And even if you're just starting, I go through my seller guide while I'm talking to them. I've gotten to the point now where I say, I'm just going to leave this with you. I'm going to talk through it. But if you're brand new, it really helps you to have, here's my, guide. So you can use that as a reference point and talking point and kind of get through those things. I'm saying, I don't know if there's a line, right? Like my line is I sell 70 homes a year. That would be my line.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what I would say if I was new. Back when I was brand new, I was really fortunate in that my first 4 listings were people that knew me. They knew I was new. They didn't care. They knew I was good at what I was doing when they knew me. And so they knew that skill would transfer on. So if you're working with people that know you in your current or past career, they're not going to question you as much. And then by the time you start going into random people, you could say, my company sells X amount of homes per year, and just use your branch's volume, right? You could do something like that. The more facts that you can pull out of the TMO, and that when you're quoting statistics, they don't tend to question you as much.
Can
Other
I
questions?
add to that, Kristen?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just say from personal experience that one of the biggest mistakes new agents make is not sharing their commission. So if I mean, you really can't fake confidence. You've either been through listing appointments and have sold a house, or you haven't. And one of the best things you can do is call somebody like Kristen and say, hey, I'll give you 50% of this deal if you'll come to the listing appointment with me and be my co-listing agent on this deal. Do that for the first 2 or 3, 4 deals. And then by your 5th deal, you don't have to lie that you're new. You're going to go in with that confidence and you're going to be having a great start. But, relying on people like Kristen, to partner with you on your first few deals, it's priceless. So many people struggle for like 2 or 3 years doing a handful of deals because they're just so wrapped up in trying to do it on their own when the help is out there. So just ask for it, especially at KW.
Awesome. But yeah, you're right. I remember, and something that still drives me crazy. I remember when I first started, you'd be talking to someone on the phone, and like if the second question out of their mouth is, what's your commission or what's your fee? It's going to tell you a lot about that person, right? They're very tight on their pennies, or they've read something online or they're looking at Redfin, right? I think Redfin charges 4.5%. So if they're so tight on that, I used to be, Phil, you're right. I used to be scared to answer that, or we were trained back in the day to say, try not to answer that question until you get to the listing appointment, because once you show your value and demonstrate your value, they're not going to ask that, or by the time they ask that or you say it, it's not as important. And I guess I've been doing it long enough now that most people don't ask, but then again, I'll still get someone that calls me out of the blue and say, what do you charge? Actually, even one of my repeat clients, I sold her home for $1.1 million, helped her buy one through a divorce. She's now dating someone. They would like to sell both of their homes and buy a house together. She knows exactly how I work. She knows who I am. We're friends. But the boyfriend doesn't, right? Never met him. Maybe he has his own realtor from his past. So the email I got from them last night was, if you sell both of our houses and you help us buy something around 1.5 to 2 million, what are you going to charge us? What, are you going to discount? Well, sure, I will, of course. And I said, here's what I would charge you guys for the 2 sales. And they asked a smart question. They said, what are you going to give the buyer's agent commission? Because now that the buyer's agent commission is published in public, I guess, people are understand that if you offer a sub, not that there's a standard, but if you offered a lower buyer's agent commission, some agents may not show it. We're talking like really low, but I never discount the buyer side, because buyer's agents honestly are working harder than listing agents these days. I think, I guess we're not supposed to talk about it, but I think they should be getting more instead of getting less. But so I told him that. And she said, well, what are you going to do for our house? What's the marketing? And I said, it's the same marketing I did for you before. And I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you guys about it. But at this point, if someone's asking me up front, I'll just tell them, because I don't usually think that that's maybe someone I want to work with anyway. They're looking for a discount broker. And I'll even start with the conversation with, oh, well, I'm not a discount broker. I'm a full service agent. And the amount of experience and skills and marketing that you get with me, you would much rather want to hire me than a discount broker that's going to put a sign in the ground and put you in RMLS and pray. Don't you want to get the most dollar for your house? Well, that's my job, is to do that for you. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. So literally, I apparently have blasted through this. Oh, good. Is there more here? Okay. CMA script. So these are scripts, right? Would you like, how would you like to obtain the highest price possible for your house? I really dig in at the scripts. I struggle with trying to memorize those, but if you are brand new and need some, these are actually really good. I just always say, you know, what is your motivation? Is obviously, doesn't everyone want the highest price possible? It seems like it. You guys can read through these on your own. I'm not going to read them to you. But this one's pretty, you know, it's pretty obvious. I've changed it in my own words, but the more people we can get to your house, the better the final price will end up. That's our goal, is just to create a revolving door. In fact, I tell my sellers, go find somewhere for the weekend, get out of town, and then you can come back Sunday night after everyone's been through your house, and we will review offers on Monday. Okay, so here's a good one, actually. So that one of your objections, right, is we need a certain amount from this sale to buy our next home. I got a call 2 weeks ago from a lady that said, well, we just bought the house 6 months ago. No, 9 months ago. It hasn't even been a year. If we wait till, yeah, that's what it was. If we wait till the end of March or mid-March, she will have to pay long-term capital gains tax instead of short-term capital gains tax. So they bought about a year ago. She said, we need to at least break even on it. So what I did is I asked her, how much do you owe? I looked at what she paid for it. She got in a bidding war when she did it a year ago. And I said, okay, here's your break even price at $415. You will break even. I think you will, I have no problem. I'm pretty sure you will sell for between $415 and $425. She goes, well, we want $550 or $450. I said, that's pushing it. To get us to $450, there's two strategies. We can start at $425 and hope that it gets upbid. If it doesn't, are you okay with $425? If it does, fantastic. Or if you are not going to sell for a dime under $450 because you need that net out, I am willing to play that game. We will list it for $450. If it hasn't sold in 2 weeks, you're not going to get $450. No skin off my back. I'm okay. I will be out my staging costs. I will be out my photograph costs, and then we'll take it off the market after a month. I don't normally do that unless I feel really confident it's going to sell. By the time I actually met with it, she was really adamant via email on the phone. She wanted to go that route. I finally met with her in person last week, developed the rapport, showed her what I would do for her with staging and photographs and why it's important to hire me. And by the end of the conversation, she said, oh, weren't you the agent that wanted to start at $399? She is interviewing multiple agents. I said, no, I never said that. I said $425. And so at the end of the day, I checked in with her. She says, well, you're my first choice, but now my daughter's neighbor's brother's cousin's boss wants to buy the house. So they're going to figure that out, which usually doesn't work out. Really doesn't. And so then I'll expect to hear from her in a week or two once they get through if that's going to work out or not. And in that case, I always say, okay, well, you guys, market exposure. Are you going to sell it to the husband's cousin's boss for $425 or $450 or $400? Because the more exposure you give it on the market, the higher the price will end up. So how much money are you leaving on the table by just selling it to this guy? So what they're weighing is, I'm not paying a realtor versus, Joe Schmo gets to buy it without that. So you have to help them walk through that, but you always want them to feel like you're on their side with that. Don't ever try to talk them out of it. It usually works itself out that they end up calling you. Can we price a little higher and come down later? Yeah, sure. But then you're going to end up lower than you would have. So we can do that, but are you okay selling for even less? How can we be sure the pricing you're recommending is the right price? We don't. This is not rocket science. It's not a black or white issue. We're going to go with a price recommendation, and the market will tell us if we got it right or not. If we got it right, you're going to get sold and a bidding war. If we didn't get it right, you're going to end up sitting on the market, and we're going to have to go down, but we're going to go down aggressively to fix that incorrect price. Closing the deal. You guys, I'm literally the worst closer in the world. Absolutely. I don't ask for the close. I know you're supposed to ask for the close 6 different times in 6 different ways. I've never been good at that. My husband and I have a policy after hiring a bad contractor one time on a split decision. We agreed that we would never decide until we talked about it in private or slept on it, and we would tell them the next day. So I always say, you guys, I if I'm a good, my no close is, hey, I'm a no pressure person. You have to decide what's right for you. Do you think we can work together? I'm looking forward to hearing from you in the future. Sometimes I forget to even say that. I'm like, okay, see ya. So whatever your style is, if you're more aggressive, and I'm a pretty direct person, so everyone thinks it's funny, I'm not a good closer. If you present value and you're a confident and, likable person, most times if they're not interviewing more people, they'll just say, okay, great. And I'll say, great, I'll send you all the paperwork through email. Getting to the right price or getting to an agreed upon price is pretty important. Sometimes in an appreciating market like this, we can say what the price is going to be, but if they're not going on the market for a month or two, I say, okay, here's where we think we're going to end up. We're not putting anything in writing until probably the week or day before you go on the market, because things could change. Oh my God. All right, you guys, fastest class ever. I don't want you to feel like you got gypped, but I don't like to meet just to meet. It's 2:30. What questions have I not answered for you that are burning about how to price a house? Don't all talk at once.
I really don't have any burning desires.
Okay, anybody else?
I have a question, but I don't know that it's actually, it's not really a pricing question per se.
Any questions?
Okay, I have a potential listing coming up. They believe there is a lien, so they have a home to sell. They want to purchase also their mother's house. They believe there's a lien on the mother's house. Is the only way for me to actually find the exact amount of the possible lien by ordering the preliminary title report now?
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you
Can't
just have
they
to have
just
a
do
really.
a title search?
I
Can't you
don't know
just
that
have them
it'll
do a
show
title search?
a lien will show the initial amount recorded. I don't know that it'll show what is currently owed.
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer anything outside of, it doesn't have to be about pricing. Nothing? All right, you guys. Well, then if you don't, my email is just kristen@kristenrader.com. Feel free to email me if you have any future questions. My number is 503-539-6946. If you want to text me questions either, I'm happy to answer anything I can. All right. Just tell, if you have to review me, just say she was the speediest instructor ever. She couldn't get logged in, or screen share sucked, but hopefully she gave us good information.
So you're good.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a great day, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.